Steve and Meet again, another Bullseye Guy podcast, still under COVID quarantine. So at least I've got, my haircut. We're not so sure about Richard. I asked him about the hat. He said that's his COVID look. He's stuck up in Malibu. So excited to have you. This is Richard Gibbs. I could go through the history. I could go through all kinds of things from music to mogul to studio to Malibu, but I want to go old school, Richard. Let's go all the way back to the music days, the genesis of not only how you got started, what your interest in music was, and then talk to us about the band that many people may have heard of.
The band they would have heard of was my first band called the Counterfeiters in 5th grade.
Nice.
How did it all start? Going back to elementary school, 5 years old, forced piano lessons, kind of the traditional thing, Mom made me take piano lessons. By the time I was 10, I was also playing trombone and guitar. And I just always liked the music. I was just into it. Some guys get into music to meet girls. I got into music before I was into girls. So it just stuck with me, basically, my whole life. And, it's run the gamut from being a player to being then a composer and a producer and a studio owner and you name it.
So in 5th grade, what was the first instrument and how did you pick what you eventually ended up playing as you got older?
Well, in 5th grade, I was already a pianist, but I was playing classical repertoire.
Okay.
But then I picked up a guitar, much to my father's horror, and started learning rock and roll songs. And I think the first song, I had formed a little band in 5th grade with 2 buddies, and we were playing, like Gloria by Van Morrison and Little Black Egg and Satisfaction by the Stones.
Nice.
So that's,
I think
it's funny, you think about it, at a band, a bunch of 10-year-olds, 10 and 11-year-olds playing I Can't Get No Satisfaction.
Yeah, probably not understand the lyrics. Your music career and mine took wildly divergent paths.
Tell me.
I had a band in 5th grade also.
Okay.
And I was a drummer because my mom, believe it or not, was a drummer. So I was the drummer. 5th grade, we're doing a talent show. And beside me, I had a black light, those old-fashioned black lights.
Uh-huh.
And I reached down to move the black light by grabbing the light bulb.
Not smart.
And it burned my fingerprint. To this day, I have no fingerprint. So my entire music career ended in 5th grade when I burned my finger.
So that led to your life of crime then, because you have no fingerprints.
Yeah, crime and entrepreneurism. We just, we entertain different ways. Good. So then that was through high school. Then get us up a little further out of high school into the Oingo Boingo days and kind of what happened there and how that came about.
Well, I was a brainiac kid, believe it or not. I skipped my senior year of high school and enrolled in a community college in Daytona Beach and tested out of my freshman year of college as well, tested out of all the entry-level classes. So I got an AA degree, a 2-year degree, before I even graduated high school. But meanwhile, it was all about the music for me, and I was playing in bands and playing in not just rock bands, but also playing trombone in, jazz bands, big bands in high school, in marching bands. I was always first trombone. My first time in California was playing the Tournament of Roses parade in Pasadena. And the funny part about that, the whole thing, is that was a big deal that this band got invited from Daytona Beach. Huge band. It was like, I don't remember how many members we had then, probably 205 or something. And it was a very good band. It was a very good high school band. We chartered a plane to come out here. We've been raising money all year to charter that plane and to put us up and do everything. We all were selling candy door to door and stickers and all that. And we had the whole community involved. And of course, back then there were only 3 channels on television, and only one of them was carrying the Tournament of Roses parade. with I think probably Lauren Green still doing it back then.
Wow.
And we, so we get, it's our moment of glory. We're marching down Colorado Boulevard. We come to the famous turn there. We're in front of the grandstands, and you hear Lauren Green, or whoever it was, saying, and all the way from Daytona Beach, Florida, it's the Seabreeze Marching 100. And right at that very moment, while all our parents were watching, the Oscar Mayer Wiener logo is superimposed over the television, right over
you guys.
and as all you could see was the Oscar Mayer Wiener logo and our feet, you know.
Oh no.
And that was it. That was my first taste of both musical glory and commercialism at its worst.
Yeah. There's a funny scene, and I don't like to talk about movies because most people haven't watched them, but Monsters Inc. has a funny one where the little character's there and there's a commercial, and right as the commercial comes up, the logo's over his face.
Yeah.
And his partner's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, I'm on a commercial.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. I was an Oscar Mayer Wiener guy, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. And so this was college. Then how did you end up?
Oh, that was high school.
Oh, that was the high school marching band. Even better.
And then, you know, the Daytona Beach Community College was where I got my AA degree, and the band teacher there said, you should go to Berklee College of Music. And that was the first time I heard of that place.
Yeah, wow.
And started looking into it, and drove all the way to Boston to check it out. Fell in love with it, thought this is cool, this is for me, and I enrolled there. And after I ended up earning a Bachelor of Arts degree in classical composition while I was there. So basically I was a classically trained rock and roller who went to a jazz college and got a classical degree in composition, and then moved out here to find my way in this crazy, crazy business that, you know, I find myself in. I didn't know a soul when I moved here. I didn't know anybody. I just started digging my way through it. I'll plug my podcast right here. There's an episode of my podcast about this, an upcoming episode about how I ended up in Oingo Boingo. But the Reader's Digest version is, I was playing, believe it or not, with Tom Jones.
Okay, wow.
With Tom Jones, and the other keyboard, I was miserable. It wasn't me. It wasn't my style. Anybody that knows me can't imagine me playing with Tom Jones. Tom was great, sweet guy and all that. It's just, What's New Pussycat is not my idea of fun music.
Yeah.
And I was into, you know, hardcore jazz fusion, and I wanted to be Jan Hammer or, you know, Joe Zawinul. I wanted to play in Weather Report. And here I am playing What's New Pussycat in the Green Grass of Home. So I quit. I served notice with Tom's band, and the other keyboard player in the band knew what was going on. And the last night of the gig in Vegas, that's where we were at the time, he hands me a slip of paper and says, when you get back to LA, you might want to give them a call. You know, there's this unsigned band, and they're looking for a keyboard player. And I kind of blew it off, but when I got home, I pulled out that slip of paper and called it, and that was Danny Elfman. That's how I ended up in Boingo. So I went from Tom Jones to Oingo Boingo. And prior to Tom Jones, I was the musical director for Chaka Khan. So this is some serious 180s music.
Yeah, wow. And so from the Oingo Boingo days, I mean, anybody that remembers that, it was a huge band, you know, primarily 80s. What's your biggest takeaway during the time of Oingo Boingo? Like, what was the most creative aspect, and what was most surprising as the band took off and you became part of it?
Well, first off, Oingo Boingo always was Danny Elfman's band. He wrote the music. There was a deal that if somebody wrote a piece of music, and of the 8 guys, if 7 of us decided that we wanted to perform that piece of music, that we could override Danny.
Okay.
But nobody would ever want to override Danny.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Trump. I mean, that's going to make Danny shiver. Nobody wants to go against him, right? So no other music. I never even bothered to try to write music for Boingo. So creatively, it wasn't really, I wasn't getting my yayas out as a composer. As a player, it was a lot of fun, and it was even a bit challenging at times. but I knew I had to get my creative yayas out elsewhere, and I did. I started another band while I was in Boingo. I started a band called Zuma 2, and we were signed to CBS Records. And for those of you listening to this, have fun trying to find that band now. But in the meantime, I had built up a pretty good reputation as a session player. So I was playing, I don't know how many albums I played on, 150, 200 albums. You know, I played with everybody under the sun. I played on a Tom Waits album. I played with, my brain just stopped. All these pop acts, Stan Ridgway, Robert Palmer. And that's a fun one, by the way. Another podcast, the first one in the series, is about how I met Robert Palmer. I met Robert Palmer by writing a letter of complaint to him. And
okay.
You have to listen to the podcast and you get the context. It's a fun story. I met him in the Bahamas. I'm working in a studio called Compass Point, and he was in the condo next to mine and was making too much noise. I couldn't sleep. So I wrote a tongue-in-cheek letter of complaint, and he thought it was funny as hell, invited me over. We hit it off and ended up working with him. I played keyboards on Simply Irresistible for Robert.
Okay. Wow.
And
that's very cool
stuff too. So,
well, then let's talk about, we can go down either lane on the creativity side now, because the composer side of you has led to other opportunities in LA, and the composer breakfast that I've been to once, you do an amazing job. And then the music composition side has led to the studio. So pick a lane and let's figure out which one we start with.
Oh, it's up to you. As I said, when I was in Boingo, I started to make a good living on the side as a session player. And it was while doing that I fell in love with the art of film scoring, because I was playing on film scores and I was out in the orchestra. And I had studied film scoring. I had taken a class in it at Berkeley. My degree was composition, but film composition's a more specialized animal within that. And, but once I went on a scoring stage, the first big movie that I played on was a movie called The Last Starfighter. And Craig Safin was the composer and kind of took me under his wing a little bit. I kind of assisted him on a bunch of things. And I just fell in love with the whole process, but still, why would anybody hire me? I had this many credits as a film composer, zilch. Yeah. I hadn't even scored a commercial, nothing. And there was a movie that came along called Sweetheart's Dance that was directed by a gentleman named Robert Greenwald, who's better known these days as a hardcore activist with a company he has called Brave New Films, and he makes left-wing propaganda, if you will, films.
Okay.
But Robert was just in post-production on this movie, Sweetheart's Dance, had Don Johnson, Susan Sarandon, Jeff Daniels. It was a real movie in a real studio with a real budget, and not the kind of thing that somebody like me would get the job to do. This should have gone to, John Williams or any number of other people. But Robert had a different idea how he wanted to approach the music. He wanted it to be adaptations of songs, but like take a song and turn it into score. And I just happened to have the perfect combination of skill sets between my compositional background and my considerable experience at that time in the recording studio, handling production as a keyboard player and arranger. So I pitched to him how I would go about doing it. He said, "You're hired," basically on the spot, and scored my first movie. And then that led to, indirectly, but quite quickly, led to me being asked to be the musical director for the old Tracy Ullman show on Fox.
Okay. Wow.
And Tracy, I was replacing another guy who had left or was let go. I don't know what happened to him, but they had done everything with pre-record up until that moment. which is kind of a standard thing to do in TV. And I was trying to keep Zuma 2 together, and those guys needed money. And I pitched to Tracy and the producers of the show. I said, the only way I'll do this show is if the band is actually live on the stage with you while you're singing. And everybody thought I was crazy. Tracy loved the idea. We did it. I pulled it off. I had a very good band. We brought in a remote truck. And from then on out, every time on that show, even though it didn't look like it or sound like it, the band was actually live.
Wow.
And that was where I met Matt Groening. A lot of people don't know that The Simpsons started out as like little 1 minute,
little snippets in the Tracy Ullman show. Yeah.
They were in a very bizarre hand-done animation by Klasky Chupo. It was a different look to Bart. And it didn't have any music in it, except for once in a blue moon, there would need a little bit of music, like where I remember one where Maggie picked up too many balloons and started floating away, and she floats over a circus, and Matt came to me and said, can you give me some Calliope music? And I just knocked it out in like 10 minutes. It was done. He was happy. And we became friends. And when the show, they decided to break it out as its own show, which was a total Hail Mary pass on the part of Fox. Fox at that time was going under. It was not a successful network then. And somebody said, well, let's take The Simpsons and turn it into a primetime cartoon, which was an outrageous idea, right? And somebody else, I think it was Matt, was like, oh, I want Danny Elfman to write the theme. Not knowing, nobody knew my connection with Danny because I had left the band like 4 years earlier. And which led to a very funny conversation where I'm in a room with a bunch of the producers, and he said, well, we've hired Danny Elfman to write the theme, but we want you to do all the other music. Do you think you can write in the style of Danny Elfman? Are you familiar with him? Are you? Yeah, if anybody can knock off Danny, it's me. I was in a band with him for 5 years. No problem. So that is where, that long story, that was kind of the nexus. That's where everything, because The Simpsons took off. I did the first season. The show was a huge hit. And Danny's career was taking off too. And people would call looking for Danny, and he was too busy. And we had the same agent, and they would, my agent would say, well, you can't get Danny, but Richard can do it, and he can do it just as well. And I'm scoring 3, 4, 5 movies a year. And I was off and running from that point.
Wow. Talk to me real quick, Richard. I'm curious on this, because you mentioned one word earlier, and you know me, I'm pedantic on words, like specific words. What's the process of scoring something? Like what do you work through creatively? I don't even know where it starts. Is it an idea, an inspiration, an arc? Like, where do you start? What's the process for that?
Well, usually, not always, but I'd say 95% of the time, the composer is hired after the movie has been shot and they're in the editing process. So we're like the last major piece of the puzzle that comes in at the end, the last major creative piece. And the advantage of that is that you get to react to what everybody else has done, to how the actors played the scene, how the writer wrote the scene, how the director directed it. And for me, it's kind of already there. You know, it's like that old cliche about, you know, there's a big piece of rock and the sculptor just has to chip away that which isn't what he's got in his mind's eye. It's kind of like that. So I'm looking at the movie Cold for the first time, and I just start hearing music in my head. I react to it.
Wow.
It might be based on cliches. It might be, it might have to do with the style or the genre of the movie itself. For instance, I scored the movie 10 Things I Hate About You, and it was a high school romantic comedy. Heath Ledger's first movie, by the way, and Julia Stiles. And that to me just felt like, I don't want that to be orchestral. That needs to be what the kids would be listening to. It needs to be fun. It needs to be up tempo. The problem with certain styles of music that they may be hip and cool, but they don't leave space for dialogue necessarily, and they don't drive the scene in the correct way. And what popped in my head was ska. I want to score that movie as a ska band.
Yeah.
And we created a ska band and scored the whole thing like that, and it worked very well. But then I would turn right around, and the next movie would be a 95-piece orchestra. It just depends on the movie itself. The movie tells you what it needs. I know that's precious, but
does the producer, director, or do you how do you decide between scoring original content and writing something original to match a scene versus pulling a song that somebody else has done that might match within there?
Well, pulling a song is not usually the composer's job. That's a job of the job title for that is music supervisor.
Okay.
And every once in a while there'll be a music supervisor that thinks they actually supervise music, and they try to tell me what to do. And said, no. Your job is to pick the songs. I am working directly with the director of the movie
to create a song.
Creatively, I'm going through with him what he wants. We do something. Let's get to the little technical here. We do something that's called a spotting session. And in a spotting session, I sit down in a screening room somewhere or just at an editing bay, and the director and I will watch the movie and stop every couple of minutes and say, okay, right here, I want music to start here. The director will say that. And I need to underline, I really want to bring out, Brad Pitt's joy in this moment. Not that I've ever seen a Brad Pitt movie, and I said, oh, okay, got it. Yeah, that needs to be emphasized for the point of the story that's going to pay off later.
Got it.
So that's called a spotting session. You say, I'm going to put music in this spot and put music in that spot.
Emphasis and stuff.
And that takes about 4 hours, and there's a music editor who sits there and takes careful notes of everything we discuss. That gets turned over to me in like a Bible of what I have to write, and then I'm off and running.
And so how did this transition to, if I'm correct, where you're sitting now, are you in Woodshed? Are you in the studio?
I am.
Love that place. So talk to me about the studio, the creation, if you can give a little tour. Is the piano still there that everybody signs?
Oh yeah, I even lit it up for you. I'll show you.
All right.
So the way every film and television composer needs to have some kind of a studio to write in. And I always had something. It was one place was a converted bedroom at first, then a converted guest house, and another converted guest house. But finally, we bought this property that had a guest house on the property, and I had enough money. I finally got paid enough on the job. It was a movie called Queen of the Damned that gave me enough money to play with to build my dream recording studio. So I built this place for me. It's called Woodshed Recording. Those playing at home can look it up and go to woodshedrecording.com and see it. I built it for me, and because it was just building it for me, I broke all the rules of studio design because I didn't care. I wasn't thinking that I'm going to rent it out at the time that I built it, and did all sorts of things that are very odd for recording studios. First off, okay, here comes the tour part.
Yeah.
We're in Malibu, and it's probably not going to read here, but looking out these.
Oh, I can see it. There you go. Turn back to the right and let the light adjust. Hold it there. So you're on the hill. You can see off in the distance all the way down to the ocean.
Right. I'm going outside. That's the Pacific Ocean out there.
Yeah, amazing.
And now, no way I'm going to cut off that view, right? That's just not going to work. But the problem is glass, look at all this glass here.
Yeah.
Creates acoustic anomalies. It's very reflective and causes a problem. But again, I didn't care. I was building this for me. I'm building it from a place of inspiration and not a technical building at all. I wasn't thinking in terms of acoustic design. Most people build recording studios with, by, and for engineers and acousticians. And the musicians are invited into that space. I flipped that script, not deliberately, but I'm not an acoustician, nor am I an engineer, but I am a composer and I am a musician, and I wanted it to feel good to me. So I built it with that in mind and broke all these rules. Here's another view going out this way, more glass, more doors. And this was looking out over the swimming pool and jacuzzi.
Yeah, pool, jacuzzi. I remember a garden.
Yeah. Well, this garden, that gets into a whole nother story. That's what saved this studio during the Woolsey fire.
From the fires.
Yes, the garden absolutely did that. I mean, look at the studio. What do you see here? What is that?
You're surrounded by trees and shrubbery.
Oh, and the studio itself is wood.
Oh, it's wood.
It's called the woodshed.
Yeah, it's called the woodshed. So you've got a wooden building in the middle of the Malibu fires.
These are untreated cedar shingles.
Yeah.
This is clear Douglas fir, by the way, coated with marine spar varnish, which is extremely flammable.
Yeah.
None of this burned during the fire. There is a video that I hope that you can clip into this later. That's on the studio website. It's about a 1 minute video.
Okay, we'll pull it in.
Shot that. Yeah, it was the drone. You can do this while I'm describing it. I asked a drone operator about a week after the fire to take the drone and go straight up above the studio while aiming down. It is incredibly dramatic. You see, it looks like the roof of a beautiful studio and this beautiful greenery all around. And as it goes up and up and up, suddenly you realize it's this little green island in a totally 360 degrees in the middle of Dresden.
Yeah, just charred.
It
wow.
Just gone, including our house, which that's probably not, the sun's too bright, which is gone. Our neighbors are now building their house. That's getting on its way.
Yeah.
But all the houses around here, 23 houses on my block alone burned down. And we're on an 1.5 acres here, and everything burned except the immediate grounds around the studio. And for the answer to that, watch Kiss the Ground. Have you seen that yet?
No.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, Josh, you know Josh Tickell, right?
Yeah, I just found out today he's sick.
Yes, I did too.
Yeah.
He's going to he'll be all right. So Kiss the Ground is a documentary about exactly the work that my wife Linda has been doing for years now. And this is the answer. I know I'm taking you off topic, but it's so important that this gets stated, and I cannot overstate this. This is the answer to all our problems.
Okay.
As in terms of environment, in terms of economy, in terms of politics, everything. It sounds stupid, but it's 100% true. It's so simple and it's so powerful. It's all in the ground. It's in the soil.
Is it Josh's movie?
Yeah. It's called
Oh, I had no idea. I haven't seen him in a while. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
It just came out just a couple of days ago. And it's, but it's also it's a organization called Kiss the Ground.
Okay.
Not Josh's organization. He shot the movie with them. And it's the same. My wife, Linda, is an advocate for Kiss the Ground. And boy, I'm not going to do it justice. I just encourage everybody to look into this. Wait, here's a little color right now. Here's one of our gardeners. We're going down there.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah. We're working on the grounds down here. So if you treat your soil correctly, if you grow your grasses and your plants correctly, and you think them through, it's beyond just being organic. You don't have to use any kind of fertilizer, or certainly no pesticides or insecticides, none of that stuff. And you end up with soil that, well, here's a fun one for anybody listening to this. If you have to mow your lawn every couple of weeks, I'm just going to make your life so much easier.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Let it grow.
Well, because if your grass is 3 inches high, if you cut your grass, keep it at 2 or 3 inches, what happens is the roots below ground are only going to get to be about 4 or 5 inches deep. So you have a soil structure that's out of sight, but it's working away. It's only 4 or 5 inches deep. If you let that same grass, just a fescue, whatever the normal grasses you have, you let it grow. You let it grow to 8 or 10 inches or a foot, the roots will go down 2 to 3 feet, depending on the grass. And those roots then create a whole ecostructure under the surface of the ground. It's called the soil carbon sponge, and it's filled with fungi and all sorts of mycelia and pill bugs and worms and everything and all sorts of bacterial stuff. It's a fascinating study. And what happens is, to bring us back to the fire, is which is what my wife has been doing here for years. So we have super rich soil that she's created, not by shipping it in, but by creating it with composting and everything else. That soil will hold, and does hold, 30 times its weight in water. So when it rains here, anywhere else, all of our neighbors, it rains, most of the water runs off and goes down into the gully, what we're used to seeing. But this is more like, this is regenerated agriculture down here, and this is more what nature intended. We can have a torrential downpour here, no water comes off the property.
And it sucks it up. Wow.
And that was what was in the soil at the time of the fire. So it protected the whole building.
Interesting. So I'll reach out to Josh because I'd love to catch up with him.
Yeah.
So last couple minutes, give me a tour and the story, and let's wrap it up with the piano, because the piano to me is the epicenter of what you were able to do with Woodshed, of getting people there and everything.
Well, you know, you were instrumental in that to some degree.
Yeah, our little metal man talk. I'm like, focus here. That's why I'm now called the bullseye guy. Like, let's target.
That's right. That was an early version of the bullseye guy you did with me years ago. We were starting to get some clients come in here that were starting to hear about the place. And I realized, oh boy, I can actually make money renting this place out, and I could just go surfing. And I came to you, or you came to me. We had this meeting, and I said, yeah, help me find, how do I get these high-end clients? He goes, well, who do you want? I remember this so clearly. Who do you want in there? And I said, well, I'm thinking legacy artists. I'm thinking people that have, you know, already very well established. They're on their 10th album or whatever it might be. And I'm starting to describe the kind of music and all that. And you said, wait, stop. I said, what? And you said, no, tell me who you want.
Who you want.
Who are the names?
Yeah.
And you said to me, just think about it, you can get back to me. And it's like I hadn't thought about it in those terms until that moment. And you caught me up short, and I go, okay, I'll do it. And I pulled out a napkin and started writing on it. And you said, no, get it back to me later. I said, Stephen, I can do this right now.
You got it now.
I know who I want. And I wrote down 5 names right away.
Bono.
I was Bono, Sting. I can't remember.
Yeah. And you're like, holy crap, I know these guys.
Right. And I go, oh my God, why am I showing you this? Why am I waiting? I can get a hold of any of these guys. And until I wrote it down, I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
So now these guys are all in my piano.
Yeah, because what happens is the story, Richard, is when you came up with that, it was isolation of faces. We name names. You're like, holy crap, I know these guys.
Yep.
They knew you. Now what they do is they technically come out and, well, when you had the house, they rent the whole studio and the house, and they'd stay there for 3, 5, 7 days, full creativity. So you created a completely different eco structure for them to be creative in.
Yeah, we've had people stay for 6 weeks or whatever. Oh,
Which the other thing you joked is you credit me with saving your marriage because now they pay you to go on vacation.
That's right. That's right. So it's been a great thing, and the very first time it occurred to me to basically put graffiti on a $75,000 piano was I was working with Jonathan Davis. We had done Queen of the Dam together, and then I was working with Korn, producing Korn Unplugged and doing arrangements with them and kind of being a musical director for them. And John and I became very good friends. He was over here one day and said, John, why don't you just sign my piano? He goes, really? I said, just do it. So the very first, I don't know if it'll show up, but it's kind of faint.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. You can totally see it.
Yeah, it's just that kind of hieroglyphic that says Korn. So he was the first one to sign it. That one's kind of faded a little bit. And then ever since then, every time somebody comes in, they sign the piano. But I have a rule that you have to work here. You can't just come in and sign my piano. You actually have to have done something here. It's going to be upside down to you, but you know, that's kind of back there by, do you see that hinge back there, the piano hinge?
Yeah.
To the left of the hinge is Tom Petty. To the right is Barbra Streisand. To the right of Barbara is Babyface. Below the hinge is, well, there's Max Gail, you know Max.
Yeah.
And then Anthony Hopkins.
Wow.
And Chris Martin.
Yeah.
Right there. That's Chris. Says, love you, Coldplay. So Bono's in here. All the guys in U2 are in here. For some reason, this ended up being like the rapper arm over here. It says Swayze, Logic, Macklemore. And then interestingly enough, right next to Swayze is Lee Ritenour, as jazz guitarist. And I just spotted, we just had this client in here, and I just spotted her signature. I hadn't seen it yet. It's Kaylani. She signed it nice and big, so you can't miss that.
Yeah.
So it's, well, here's a fun one is, I don't know if you can see it, it's Seth MacFarlane. There's
really?
You see Stewie there?
Yeah, you can see Stewie. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's Seth MacFarlane. So, Pink, Cher, Lady Gaga, they're all on my piano.
Yeah, and that's Richard. I'm so happy for you because the majority of things in the studio could be replaced with equipment and walls and glass. That piano,
irreplaceable,
was the one thing that can never be replaced. So, you know, I know the house has been a challenge. I'm so glad the studio's still there, and you know, excited for you with all you're doing.
Thank you so much. Having fun.
Yeah, so real quick, podcast. Tell everybody how to get a hold of it, how to watch you, how to learn. If you want information on the Monday Composer's Breakfast, I'll put that out there also. I love those things.
Great. So the podcast is called Invisible Arts because music is the only invisible art. And it's audio only. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One, I'm ugly. Two, I don't want, I want to be able to put a lot of music in it. And if you have video, like right now, if we were to play a piece of music in here, technically you have to get what's called a sync license for that, which is expensive and problematic. But if you're audio only, you don't have to get a sync license. That's covered under normal licensing through ASCAP. So it's a lot easier just to stay audio. And on top of that, artistically, for what I'm doing, I prefer to paint the story and have you imagine it rather than
see it.
Looking at me talking about it.
Well, I appreciate it, but the piano and the tour had to be visual because
of course
that is such an original thing. It'd be hard to imagine. But all right, buddy.
I have to plug one more thing.
Sure.
The other thing you were talking about was the Composers Breakfast Club. You can see that, composersbreakfastclub.org. Anybody is welcome. You don't have to be a composer to come play along with us. And then the big thing that I'm really promoting right now is right here.
Okay.
That's the logo for Armory of Harmony. And Cameron,
you're working with Armory and Cameron Sinclair and stuff.
I started it.
You did.
Cameron came to work with me. So so what we're doing is gathering up gunmetal from buyback programs around the country and working with instrument manufacturers to make musical instruments utilizing that gunmetal, and then giving it to high school programs. Going back to the beginning of this whole conversation, giving it to kids around the country to make music with. So it's swords into plowshares, right? Here, I'll show you. Wait, this is fun.
Yeah, I was hoping you were reaching for something because you just kind of disappeared.
This is a prototype mouthpiece.
Okay.
You can just barely see there. It
says, you can see the wording.
Yeah, Armory of Harmony on it.
Yeah.
That's a trumpet mouthpiece. And that's solid gun steel.
Wow.
And we have other instruments too. And we're going to be in next year, thanks to Cameron's connections, we're going to have an exhibit at a traveling exhibit with the Smithsonian. of some of our instruments. So that one, so look up armoryofharmony.com and join us and help us with this.
I've seen that one. I've known about it for years. I didn't know you were involved. So I will circle back because as you know me with ideas, I have a few for you on that one. But all right, buddy. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're doing well. And I want to bring Adam Gaynor and the Matchbox 20 guys want to come to the composer breakfast. So are you still doing it now during COVID?
Yeah, we're doing it. It's all with Zoom, just like you're doing. We meet every Monday morning via Zoom. And with the advantage of that is now we can get people from all over the world.
Perfect.
We get speakers from Australia and London, wherever. And we've had some really cool ones. So it's been getting actually better in a way.
All right, I'll send you some good people.
Great. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Thanks so much. Thanks, Richard.
All right. Adios.
All right. Bye-bye.